Hello and welcome to the webinar hosted by Mergerware and Global PMI Partners, the recipe for M&A success post-merger integration. I, Prakya Bhatt, Customer Success Manager at Mergerware, will be the moderator of today's session. Our panelists for today include Christopher Wan, Partner at Global PMI Partners, and Abhishek Kumar, VP of Product Management. The session at Mergerware. The session will be for 1 hour with 40 to 45 minutes for session and 15 minutes for questions and answers. If you have any questions during the session, please do type it out in the questions tab of the control panel of the GoToWebinar. We will address them post the session. Mergerware is a SaaS offering and a new generation M&A platform powered by cutting-edge technology and machine learning capabilities. Abhishek from Mergerware will be talking in detail on how it helps streamline your M&A deals end to end. Without further delay, I will hand over the session to Chris. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join the webinar. It's going to be an interesting webinar, 60 minutes. And let's start right away with a short presentation of what we're going to talk about in the current session. So it's about how winning acquirers employ the right strategy. It's about risk factors and red flags, some leading practices, and then old approaches versus the new ones. And we end with an overview of Next Generation Integration Management Office. First, a quick introduction of Global PMI Partners. Global PM and myself personally, so this is myself here. We didn't include the video to reduce bandwidth demand a little bit. I'm a co-founder of Global PMI Partners, and Global PMI Partners are global acquisition integration specialists. That's what we focus on. So we work with company executives, with the teams, we work with private equity. And what we do is connecting the M&A strategy with the delivery in order to reduce risk of failure. As you see, we have people a bit around the globe, and we work from the pre-deal phase, prior to signing, between signing and closing, and post-closing. And the presentation will be available for you later to download, so I'm not going through all of this here, but you see there's a lot of work. Merger integration is not just starting post-closing. There's a lot of work to do pre-deal, pre-signing, and between signing and closing. This is also what the webinar will be about, actually. We offer work on integrations, the opposite of integrations being carve-outs, and then we help companies develop their M&A skills. Some of the clients that we worked with here. So the recipe for M&A success. Basically, to bring your M&A strategy to a successful delivery, there are 6 pillars. And we call it the Vickers model. Sounds a bit Catholic, perhaps, but the V stands for the vision, I for incentives, C for the culture, A for action management, R for resources, S for skills. And on all of these dimensions, you have a hard part and you have a soft side. So let's just do a little poll here, and we start immediately. Unfortunately, the software doesn't allow to go to do polls right away, but I suggest you answer in the chat box here where you see questions, and you can also type in your answer. So the first question is, just picture your current company or a company where you have worked before and try to see if you agree or disagree with the following statement. Our management team is aligned on the company's vision. So just give you 5 seconds and just to type in your answer. Our management team is aligned on the company's vision. Agree or disagree. See if some answers start to appear, if that works. Yes. Disagree. Agree. So that's good. The ones that agree, so I see majority agree. Yes, yes. Good. Let's switch to the second one, so this is the hard dimension of vision. Is it clear and are people aligned? The soft one, soft dimension of vision and strategy is the next question. Our management team is passionate about the business. So try to see if you can answer that. Is your management team passionate about the business, or are they falling asleep, and is it basically business as usual and not much fun? So let's see if some more answers come up. Agree. So I guess that's good. That's good news. That the participants, people who answered those questions, seems that the team is both aligned on the vision and the strategy, and the management is successful. Now, to talk a little bit about the vision here, one of those 6 dimensions. A clear vision leads to clear strategy. So first of all, you need to know, what is my current business model? And then second, where do you want to go? And third, is M&A part of that strategy? To know what your current, where you want to go with your business model, you start dreaming, right? What if we had unlimited resources, time, money, people? What if you had endless possibilities? We could dream big. And who does that? That's the remit of the senior management. Members of the dominant coalitions could also be customers in their units. Unions could also be in there. How do you do that? You do that with a creative session. You work perhaps with Lego Serious Play or the business model canvas in an inspiring setting. So you dream. And then you put that into a one-pager. Now I'll go through this one-pager. Some people may know the business model canvas. If you don't, do look it up. It's a fantastic tool. So on the right-hand side, you see your customer segments. So is everybody aligned on the customer segments that you want to address? Could be geographically, could be, you can slice and dice it in a number of ways. And I'll go a little bit here in detail. So customer segments, and for whom is the company creating value? Who are the most important customers of the company? You make a segmentation by business unit or industry vertical, by customer profile, profitability, geography, whatever is relevant to you. So try to get aligned on that one. Second, align on your value proposition, which is, what value do we deliver to customers? What we think is valuable to our customers. Do they actually agree with that? Is our value proposition relevant? Which one of our customers' problems are we helping to solve? So you can read those elements, but that's another element of alignment. Align on the channels. How do you bring your product or your service to the customer? How are you reaching them? Is that the best way to reach them? Do you want to have another way to reach them? Alignment on customer relationships, right? How closely are your customers tied in to you? Is that good? Is it not good? How costly is it to maintain that relationship? And then you align on revenue streams. What are customers paying? Is it enough? Are they paying for the right services? Are we delivering services for free that perhaps they should pay for? Alignment on key resources. What is a key resource? That's something that you need in-house to deliver your value proposition. An easy thing might be you need to have a laptop. You have a building, machines, right? What do you need in-house and what can you outsource? Because outsourcing goes to key partnerships. Maybe you don't need to have a building. Maybe you just lease a building. So those elements, you can all brainstorm around that as a management team and put it on this one-pager. Now, why is that important in M&A? Well, because your 2B business model, maybe you've seen that it is too difficult for you to organically grow the right customer segment. Maybe you want to move into a new territory. Maybe it's very difficult to do that organically. and M&A could be an answer. Delivery of your product to your customer, M&A may be the answer. Value proposition, maybe you have something that you need to buy. You need to buy a certain IP. Those are things that Cisco does, for example, right? They have the channels into the customers, but they may be lacking one problem, or Apple. Then they buy this small startup and they push that specific problem, they add it to the value proposition and push it through the channels. So M&A may figure in your future business model, and that's why this strategy is so important. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat box on your screen, and perhaps I will answer them during the session if I see some popping up, or Prakia will collect them later on and we'll answer them at the end of the session. So now I asked these two questions. One was on the hard element of the vision. The other one was on soft. But there are a number of questions you may ask, and I just put a couple here on the screen. These are the hard elements for the vision, right? Is there a clear vision for the company? Is that vision translated into a short and a medium-term strategy? So this is a checklist that you can do for yourself, for your own company. How ready are you for M&A? There's an overall business of the corporation already. We already have the as-is business model. Management is aligned around the overall business model. That was a question I asked. If you would ask any member of the management team what the customer segments are, would they all agree? Would they all have the same answer? Management acknowledges that strategy delivery is just as important as strategy design. There's often a big gap between the two. Another question in the checklist, the acquisition fits into the overall business model, is what I explained. So you can go through these questions when you download the deck later, when it will appear on the Mergerware website and on the Global PMI Partners website. Soft elements. In our organization, top managers' egos are not as important as collective goals. If that's the case, it's good for you. It's good for your company. Our top executives are role models for change. Management recognizes the importance of active and visible leadership. The top team has a clear mandate and enjoys the support from major stakeholders. So more soft elements of the vision. Good. Now let's move. I don't see questions. Let's move to the next element, which is external risk factors and red flags. So that has to do with culture and resources, or at least I focus on the culture and resources to address this specific question. On culture, another question here. Our company's culture and values are clearly visible. Maybe in the team room, in meeting rooms, maybe in the hallway, in the reception area. Are the company's values and culture clearly visible? Is it in your company's manual? Are people aware of those values? Let's see if there are some people who disagree, agree, yes. Agree. That's one thing, right? You may have the culture and your value statements clearly visible, but then the second question is, our employees experience a daily reality that is aligned with the main messages sent by the managers. Is that the case? It is a soft side. Are people actually living those values? No, not always. No, not very much lived. Disagree. Now that sometimes. Now that is interesting. We'll talk about that in the next sometimes. Yeah. The other question that I had was around. Well, this is popping back to was around the resources. The question on the hard elements of resources, and then I'm focusing on cash here. Significant budgets are allocated to fund a post-merger integration effort. So this is in case you already had something like that in the past. If you haven't, look for something similar. But when there is a project, and is there actually enough money set aside to execute? Let's see here what the answers are. Yes, no, not understood at the outset. That's often the case. If things are not understood at the outset, what the cost will be, then at least you have to be aware of the fact and prepared that there will be a resource effort required. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for replying here. I'll go into the details again here of the. So. External risk factors and red flags, and ask a couple of questions there. Typical, the classics in risk is of course your due diligence prior to an acquisition, financial due diligence, tax due diligence, legal. In some cases, there are some exceptions, and extra focus is put on a pension due diligence. Sometimes there's a commercial due diligence, operational. Even more exceptional would be an IT due diligence or an environmental one. What I rarely see, I call these the orphans, is a cultural due diligence or synergy quantification and quantification. So the cultural due diligence, I've worked with Philips before, and Philips has had in the past done acquisitions, and they noticed that a lot of the acquisitions didn't bring in the expected return. And they also noticed that was often to do with culture. So what Philips has adopted now is actually to do cultural due diligence as a part of their due diligence. And they may drop a potential target just because the cultures are not aligned. On synergy quantification and qualification, what does that mean? Let's go in a little bit of detail here. A seller has the figures from his own perspective as a standalone company. It reflects his requirements, legal and practical, and it has perhaps some elements in there of the owner or a current account in a small company, or remuneration, or it has debt. But anyway, it's from the own perspective. Now, from a buyer's perspective, you look at the target as a combined company, reflecting the acquirer's opportunities. And those opportunities, you can put them in this what's called a Haspeslag matrix. Haspeslag is a professor, ex-INSEAD dean, current Vlerik School of, or past Vlerik School of Management dean. And he has this very simple way of putting synergies and the cost to achieve synergies in a matrix. In the vertical line, it has the difficulty of implementation. And then you also have the value. What I did to make things clear was make it green when something is contributing financially, and red when something is costing. So you may have to hire some finance staff. It's easy to do, and it's red because it costs money. You may be able to get rebates from your suppliers because you have a higher, more purchasing power. So that may bring in money. So all those opportunities you put in a matrix. And what I've done also in the past with potential acquisitions is when there's a bidding war, your finance sources, and those can be banks or other sources of finance, at a certain moment they may say, well, if you want to pay more for your target because there's a bidding war, you'll have to show me that more money is coming from synergies. And they may take some of the low-hanging fruit and put that into the valuation model. And this is the green line here that I show in the DCF. You put that in the valuation model, and then you see how much the value of the target changes for you, and then you can see how much you're willing to give to your seller and how high you can go in the bidding war. So that's synergy, why synergy quantification and qualification is important. On resources, some more questions here on resources. Significant budgets have been set aside. I asked that question. Our processes assure that we focus on what matters for our merger integration. You only have limited resources, so make sure that they are assigned correctly. Due to a lack of time, we tend to outsource important integration efforts to external specialists. Of course, I'm speaking a little bit for our own firm here, but it also makes sense to outsource some expertise if you don't have it in-house. Resources assigned to our integration include dedicated time for team members. So very often an integration takes 20-30% of your management team, of their time. Resources assigned to our project include IT support. So you can check these questions also later on. A lot of hard questions on resources. And then some soft elements here. Substantial energy and creative time has been set aside to design the right integration strategy. Running the business and securing the integration are actively balanced, which means business as usual needs the necessary focus. We have established the necessary relationship with banks, investors, and other sources of financial resources. So some soft elements that you at least are ready whenever there's a need coming up. That includes also having the right legal advisors at hand when something is needed, the right software, and the right integration advisors. And then the culture element. A survey was done a couple of years ago, actually 12 years ago already, by Accenture and The Economist on what makes an integration or an M&A deal successful. Now, the very first answer, the most important element, was to address cultural integration issues. That makes it a success. That was the most important one. And a clear organizational structure, which is actually also culture. Very important. Leadership from top management and a good communication plan. So the top 4 are all related to human capital and to more larger or lesser extent to culture. So very essential, I would say. You see that number 5 is a clear strategic rationale for the deal. That is the element to be addressed first. What is the vision? What's the strategy? And how does M&A fit in that? Now, on culture, in order to be able to do a cultural due diligence, you first need to know yourself, who you are. The Greeks have a word for that, gnotiseuton, know yourself. And yourself, that can be different. The headquarter culture can be different from regional offices, or can be different in various organizational levels, right? Also know your target's culture. That's where the due diligence comes in. Now, culture is not something that is difficult to grasp, contrary to what a lot of people think. It is actually easy to gather culture facts. If I can just give an example, I worked at a bank acquisition. One bank acquired another. The target bank was used to having fancy coffee in the offices, free quality coffee in all the offices. The acquirer had just cheap coffee and a little brown hot liquid somewhere in the corner, plus employees had to pay for it. Now they wanted to implement the cheap coffee into the target culture. It's enormous resistance, of course. And it's actually something that you can measure. It's a fact. What do we have, and how important? Why is it something that you would care about as an acquirer to push through? and will that have a negative effect on team rationale, right? Facts gathering. So you can gather some facts from your business model exercise already. Sessions with the leadership, personal profile assessments from employees. There are very good tools out there, like Richard Barrett, or you can also work on leadership with Patrick Lencioni, the 5 elements of a functional team. So you can have work sessions around that and to define the culture, both for yourself and for your target if you haven't done it for your own company. And then, of course, regular employee surveys. So what other channels are there? Surveys, interviews, existing reports from past exercises, for example. And then you can make a diagnosis of those data. A very interesting element, you see there in the green title, Erin Meyer's Cultural Dimensions, is just to look at a couple of dimensions here. Erin Meyer has 8. The dimension communicating, evaluating, leading, deciding, trusting, disagreeing, and scheduling. Now you can do this for companies, you can do this for countries, you can do this for industries. And then you can plot 3 different companies, for example, yourself and another target, or 2 targets, and decide and look how do you communicate, for example. Low context communication, that means very clear communication. If you look at the United States, that is a low context communication. You don't need to know too much about the history of the country to understand what people are saying. Compare that to China, for example, which is a very high contextual culture, where people use a certain word or a phrase, and then the person who listens understand that it has to do with a certain poem from a dynasty a couple of 100 years ago, and that poem fits into a certain reasoning and very contextual, which you would never understand if you're not part of that culture. Same thing with evaluating. Are people used to direct negative feedback or not? And the relative position is important. If you are the yellow dot and your target is the red dot on negative feedback, even though you are more or less in the middle, you will still find that the red dot is very indirect in providing negative feedback. The red dot will think that the yellow dot is very direct in negative feedback. But the green dot is even more direct. So to the yellow dot, the green dot will look as the one who gives a lot of negative feedback and is very rough in its responses. So it's all relative. The point being, even in your negotiations, it can be very interesting to do this little test. Go online and look for Erin Meyer, and you can check these cultural differences, and that will help you already in your negotiations. One example was that, for example, there was an American acquirer that wanted to do an acquisition, and actually succeeded in doing an acquisition in Brazil. Now, the American team thought they were very efficient. They went down to Brazil, had meetings in the morning, had little sandwiches for lunch, continued on till 6 or 7 in the evening, went to the hotel and worked a bit more. They thought they were doing a great job. The Brazilians were thinking, well, hello, who are you? We haven't met. They were waiting to have lunch to get to know the acquirer. They didn't get lunch. They were waiting to have a dinner in the evening and then get drunk together in order to know each other. That didn't happen. The Americans went back home and thinking things went very well. And the Brazilians thought, well, the acquirer went in and out, and they didn't have a good feeling about that at all. So you can avoid those things if you just prepare yourself a little bit. On culture, you find more questions, hard elements and soft elements on culture. The hard elements are, and we have mapped our company's values, and cultural elements. People have a clear idea what they are. We have a culture statement. Check out Netflix's culture statement. It's fantastic. We have a value statement. There are cultural champions, people who promote a certain behavior, right? The soft elements are, well, I feel inspired in my company. And our company's values are really part of the DNA. And we have a strong sense of culture. You really feel that the culture is being lived. So those are the soft elements. Thank you for hanging in there, people. I know it's a long webinar. We are halfway through. So some of the best practices or leading practices for integration teams. This is about incentivization. Now let's see 2 questions on incentives. A hard question. People are incentivized to work on a successful integration. Is that the case in your company? Let's just check on Mark. I have a question here. I'll address that later on. So are people incentivized, I don't know, by getting bonuses or in other ways to work on an integration? No. Very often you see that only the top management, only those, yeah. So that's a good point here from Georgia Curtis. Only those with earnouts. And very often that's what you see. You see that the deal makers are incentivized, or the top management, and they run away with a huge bonus. But then the people who actually have to do the operational side of the integration are not incentivized, at least not financially. Carol says yes. The second question is more on the soft side. Our company is a great place for personal and professional growth, which is an acquisition or an integration is often a great environment to experience new things and to develop yourself and to grow as a person and as a professional. So is that the case? Yes, says Carol. So the question is, our company is a great place for personal and professional growth. Yes, Maurizio. So thank you. If you are involved in an integration, that's actually the moment where you can excel and where you can develop yourself as a person if that is managed correctly. So about incentives. I put just a couple of questions here without going too much into detail. The hard side, yeah, top management has a share option. Good, agree, disagree. Middle management has share options or is financially rewarded. Employees have a share option or are owners. There's a bonus system linked to key performance indicators. Leadership regularly reinforces the commitment to strategy. That's perhaps less fitting. There are regular team incentive events. So you have those questions on incentives, and you have questions on the soft elements. Our organization sees employees not merely as a means to improve performance, but as persons behind the function. Is that how you feel? We actively engage employees in change initiatives that impact them. In our organization, people feel appreciated for their role in the integration. So as we go through this presentation, you see that these 6 elements, and for each element a hard question and soft questions, it's something that you can compare yourself with and see where you score good and where you don't score good. There is a similar book out there called 6 Batteries of Change that just appeared, 6 Batteries of Change by Peter de Prince. He calls, and those batteries are in some respects similar. They're not the same, but they are similar to these 6 dimensions. What Peter says is that see how full your batteries are, or if you need to recharge them. Good, then skills. A successful strategy execution requires the right skills to execute the strategy. 2 questions on skills. Our integration approach includes education and training in project and process management. So again, a question for the team, is that the case? Are your employees trained on project management? How to function in an integration environment? I've worked with Mölnlycke Healthcare, and their teams are actually trained regularly, at least yearly, on how to do an integration and how it impacts them, because they might do an integration or an acquisition or not, but they just want to be sure that people are prepared. No, pulled out of day-to-day jobs. Yeah. So, yes. Project, yes. M&A, no. Yeah. For me, what I see is the exception, that people are trained on how to do an integration. But those companies that do prepare their teams actually hit the ground running. Yeah. And the other question on skills is the soft side again. Our top management displays emotional intelligence. One out of many potential questions, but is that the case? The top management displays emotional intelligence. Yes. Yes, yes. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Thanks for those answers. Good. So some of those questions, some more questions on the skills side. We embed the results of integration projects into our standard operating procedures. Very often, an integration is a good reason and a good opportunity to streamline processes and to simplify processes. At Global PMI, we often use a lean-inspired integration approach, where you use and then you take the processes of your target and your acquirer, and you try to simplify them and align them and come out with something that is actually saving time and money and allows the company to be much more specific. And that then, that integration and those lessons learned become part of the new standard operating procedures. Due to a lack of experience, we tend to outsource important integration efforts to external specialists. Yes, no. Team leadership skills are the most important skills in the integration effort. Is the company aware of that? The best leaders are assigned to the integration effort. This is also a very good one, because an integration is the opportunity for a future country manager, business unit manager to really show what he is capable of. And it's a fantastic position to be in, because in that position, you see all the work streams, all the functions, and all the interdependencies between them, all the people management that is needed, all the risks that come up, the issues, how you solve them. It's the perfect way to actually excel. So it's not something that should be given to a junior in the organization. It needs to be given to somebody with a high potential. More questions on skills. Leaders spend a significant amount of time coaching employees on the floor. Transparency and trust reign in the company. Is that the case? Yes or no? An integration isn't a time for subtlety. But one of the skills you need is also rigor and keeping the momentum going, and not taking no for an answer, or not taking an excuse for an answer. If you haven't done the job, you haven't done the job. You need to see why it is and how to clear the obstacle. Our top management displays emotional intelligence, middle management, line management. Good. All the new approaches to integration management. So the old approach, well, if you're lucky, there's a vision, but the vision is not shared throughout the organization. Incentives, yes, for deal makers and top management. Culture, what I still see, and I find that honestly a little bit old-fashioned, but that is, you pay lip service to the cultural element. Leadership says, yes, culture is important, and then it gets brushed aside. For me, that's the old approach. Another old approach is people think integration is just action planning. It's just project management, and everybody can do it, and our team will do it in between. Excel, Word, and PowerPoint will do. I agree with that for people who are just on the sides touched by integration management. But the head of the integration needs a powerful tool to manage the project. Resources, the old approach is, well, people will do it in between. First we acquire, then we see what the cost of integrating will be. It's often highly underestimated. Think of the cost for integration, and that includes everything, perhaps new ERP, consultants, is between 7 and 10% of deal value. Now, you may have seen at Global PMI Partners, we have a couple of studies out this year where still 2/3 of acquisitions destroy shareholder value. In the studies we did, you see that revenue growth goes down after the acquisition. EBITDA percentage goes down after the acquisition. No matter how you look at it, at industry, at how often you do acquisitions, there's some variation, but on general, you can say 2/3 of the acquisitions don't reach their target or their targeted benefits. So I think if we continue with the old approach, we'll continue to have the same 2/3 rate of failure that we have had for the last 30 years. So what's the new approach? Of course, clear vision. Basically, it's the 6 elements of the Vickers model. It's incentivization, it's culture, it's action planning, resources, skills. Those 6 elements, for me, are what makes an integration successful. So thanks for this part. I will hand over now to my colleague at Mergerware, who will talk about the next generation management software.
Thank you, Chris. It was quite informative. And I think people got a very good idea in terms of how a revolution is required in the thought process, and also in terms of execution, how M&A should be done for a newer generation organization as well. So as companies are moving faster towards integrating and acquiring more companies, it becomes imperative that we have some smart platforms that help us achieve all these goals. And Mergerware comes into picture, trying to bridge the gap that has been traditionally been there, and teams have always tried to figure out some platform which is very, very smart to tell them what should be done, how it should be done, what are the risks and issues, and smartly get it solved. So what Mergerware basically is a SaaS platform, which is a very secure M&A platform, and it's dedicated towards the management and execution of M&A deals. So it's not only focused on integration. It starts right from systematic deal discovery till to due diligence, and continues till post-merger integration as well, all within the same platform. And you have a very good view of how the deal started till how the deal got executed till closure on the same platform. So with Mergerware, companies have been able to establish a recurring high quality M&A process that diminishes the risks that generally comes bundled along with the traditional approach of deal management that Chris was talking about. So if you look at some of the key aspects that Chris was trying to highlight, and how a platform like Mergerware is really trying to mitigate all those pitfalls that most of the teams go through, is quite interesting. So we do it in a number of fashion, right from when you have the deal, when you're starting with the deal, how you can bridge the kind of cultural gaps, the environmental aspects as well, that are so important, as he was highlighting during his presentation. So Mergerware brings about a lot of information in the form of templates that people can use. So the inbuilt information is already there inside the platform, and the teams can reuse them for their benefits without really worrying about their knowledge or whether they have worked on such topics before or not. So I'll just try to showcase some of the key aspect that Mergerware has as a platform, and how it is trying to cater to the need of each and every person who is part of the M&A deal process. So to start off with, it's a very secure platform, and we have collaborations with both the leaders in terms of the cloud-based software, Amazon and Microsoft. On top of it, we have a role-based access control, which is very important, because as Chris was talking about, a lot of things are outsourced as well, and we need to collaborate with a lot of people who are may not be part of our organization. And also generally during buy and sell stage, we need to interact with a lot of people who are part of a different organization. So we can give them role-based access control, so they see and they do what they need to do. So they have a totally different view of the system, and the same system behaves differently for different set of people. On top of it, it has audit capabilities. This is something that people have been talking about, so that they really know what went right, what went wrong, and they can always track it at any given point of time. Now, coming and talking about out pre-deal features that Mergerware has, we have a unique approach of playbook management, through which you can create playbooks using the Mergerware platform. It can be playbooks coming from the Mergerware templates, as well as your own playbooks that you have devised for the number of years of research that you guys have done. So you can reuse them as well inside the same platform. And onboarding these playbooks inside Mergerware is very fast. It's like matter of few minutes, and your playbooks can be part of Mergerware tool. On top of it, you have the virtual data room inbuilt inside the system, so it saves you a tremendous amount of money that generally teams have been using to manage the documents coming from buyers or sellers. And it really gives you the kind of flexibility that you can have without worrying about the space, or maybe the deal room is closed after say few months, so you don't need to worry about that. On top of it, you have the buyer seller communication, which is very, very important, as rightly pointed out by Chris as well, that communication is the key. So we have various ways in terms of how you can communicate with the various stakeholders of an M&A activity via the platform, and again everything in a very, very secured environment. Also, all risks and issues are tracked in a dedicated risk and issue trackers, and you have a very good view of the areas that are going to give you problems, or you need to pay attention to. On top of it, as Prakhya initially started, Mergerware is a platform which is using cutting edge AI and machine learning capabilities. So it has a lot of analytical and reporting capabilities that takes care of it and reports to you. Learning from the kind of acquisitions or the kind of processes that you have followed, and makes your people smart, also preemptively points out to a lot of problem areas much before they hit you. So it's quite strong in those areas. In terms of post deal features, again, playbook is very strong, one of the strongest factor that you have, and it contains a lot of project management capabilities inside the system, like scheduling and critical path analysis. All those are inbuilt inside the system. Also, the entire platform is quantifiable, so you can see everywhere numbers. It's not subjective. So if you know some place, you see numbers less, okay, these places are not moving very fine, and you need to really pay focus on it. Again, communication within the integration team is quite strong. You have various ways of doing that, and issue and risk tracking, plus the analytics and reporting are very strong foundational pillars of Mergerware platform. Now, coming to the top management, what do they get? Like, yes, Chris was talking about that some of the people can continue working with PowerPoints or Excels, but it's not sufficient for maybe everyone. Yes, it's not sufficient, because top management neither has that kind of a time, nor it wants an insight into too many things. So it wants the key factors to be boiling down on certain dashboards, and that's what we have. So Mergerware has a number of dashboards that people can use, and also you can generate the entire live reports of the M&A activity in just few clicks, and you have all those reports in just a flash of a second. On top of it, yes, synergy planning and synergy tracking is very important once you are going for an M&A activity, and Mergerware takes good care of it. So you have a financial and synergy tracker built inside the platform, and it takes care of the key KPIs that you want post closure or you want to track to make sure that the deal is successful. Okay. I think this is a brief overview of what Mergerware does, and does it in a very good fashion. And also, we use a lot of modern day technology to really aid you in your M&A activity. So I think I'll hand it over for Q&A session if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Christopher and Abhishek. I will just address some of the questions that we have from the audience. One of the questions are, on the matrix, how do you determine how difficult it is to realize left-hand side of matrix?
Yes, there are a number of dimensions when you do that. Like one initiative will touch, for example, it will touch people. Will people have to be fired? Yes or no? If they have to be fired, it's more difficult than not. Are there legal obstacles? Yes or no? Is the company unionized? Yes or no? Are there other projects that need to be finished first before this one can be handled? Is the cost price high to achieve the synergy? You need money for some synergies, and that money can only be spent once. So you have, in all, when we do this exercise, we have about 15 dimensions that we check, and you may have, and we usually we sort them by work stream. For example, finance and sales and marketing, IT, and then within each work stream you have between 1 and 20 different initiatives to achieve synergies. Now, what we do is have a minimum maximum value for each synergy. And what we also do is have a minimum and maximum scenario. So sometimes we define a regular scenario where you don't upset things too much, or you have a quantum leap scenario where you say, we'll close one of the distribution centers, or we'll move to a whole new location, or we will close one country and move it to, right? So if you have the quantum leap scenario, the difficulty in getting there will be higher, but the rewards will be higher. So I hope that is a question, an answer to that question.
Thank you so much. There is no other questions, but there's a comment from one audience on stating that cybersecurity is also a part of cultural integration. What is your take on that?
I'll leave that to answer to Mergerware to answer that question, please.
Yes, cybersecurity is quite important. We do understand it, and cybersecurity is something that is. So if a new generation a tool like Mergerware, we thought over it right from the very go. So we get it audited by most of the leaders in the industry before we hand it over to the customer. So we have all kinds of reports and certifications that organization will require. But yet it's kind of a cultural as well, because different companies have their different perspective on cybersecurity, and also it's a touchy topic these days, because not everybody has the same definition for the kind of security that they expect. So what we try to do is to reach the highest bar in the industry that is set, and which will satisfy the requirement of most of the people.
And thanks, Abhishek. What I also see is that sometimes companies ask for the server where the data is stored to be in a certain location, to be in Ireland or Switzerland, or and
yes,
then, yeah.
To complement on what you said, Chris, it's like when you have a SaaS platform like Mergerware, we have the kind of flexibility of deploying the solution in specific geographical region. For example, if it's a European customer and we want to match with the GDPR kind of regulation, we try to have the deployment in Europe, and otherwise if it's a US client, it should be closer to them as well. So we have various regions in US as well. So with SaaS platforms, it's very easy to localize the deployment in their own proximity, and also to adhere with their cybersecurity laws of that particular country and region.
Okay, thank you so much. We don't seem to be having any other questions. So do we call this the end?
Yeah, so thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and do not hesitate to contact Abhishek or myself. On this slide, you also see that with Global PMI Partners, we wrote a book on cross-border mergers and acquisitions, and it actually appeared in Chinese this month. So you can choose to read it in English or Chinese. Abhishek?
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. It was really a nice evening spent with all of you guys. And feel free to talk to us, try to reach out to us to know more about Mergerware, and also to see how new generation M&A activities are happening across the globe, and also to experience it firsthand using a platform like Mergerware. So nice to be part of this webinar, and I welcome you all to be a part of our Mergerware family.
The webinar will be published on YouTube and on the Mergerware and Global PMI websites, as will the presentation.
Yes. Yes, the webinar information will be shared with all the attendees. Thank you so much for joining us today on behalf of Global PMI Partners and Mergerware. Have a good day and hope to see you again. Join us in our upcoming webinars. Thank you.
Thank you.